Hey everybody, it's Robin Scherzer with Robin Stampin' Hood. Welcome to the Hood. I'm here to do my series of 4 of techniques. We are meeting once a month with my group, and we're just learning some techniques that they might not have known before. So we're going to start with the first one. This is an oldie but a goodie. It's called the rock and roll technique. So what you're going to do is you are going to take a lighter ink, and I'm going to use Daffodil Delight, and I'm actually going to take my daisy stamp because this is a good one to work with this on here. And then you're going to take a different color ink, and I'm going to use Cherry Cobbler. And what you're going to do is after you've inked with the lighter, you're going to come back through and you're just going to kind of roll. So you're rolling your stamp on the darker ink. So you can kind of see where it's different there. And then you're going to go ahead and I always huff it with my breath because I've now just used that ink that has been drying as I was doing the other. So that is the rock and roll technique. Now I'm going to do it again in the middle. And so you're just going to take your lighter color again, and then you're just going to roll around the edges a little bit. Now I probably got too much there, but you can see there's the difference of the color and that. I know it's a little hard to see there, but here's my sample that I did before too, so you can kind of see the difference there. So you just want to lightly roll around your image to get the different colors. And again, that's called rock and roll. Okay, this second technique is an oldie but a goodie. It's been around a really long time, and it's called suede paper. So I'm taking some pecan pie, and what you're going to do is you're just going to take your bone folder and just start breaking the fibers of that paper. You want to go one way, and then you want to go the other way, and just you can start to see how the paper is breaking down. And just keep doing that. You're going to do it a couple, 3, 4 times on each side. See how I'm switching to the other side? It starts curling that way. Now I want to curl this way. Sorry if I'm bumping my camera there. So you're just going to keep breaking it apart. We're trying to break up the fibers of this paper. And then we're going to pull it apart, and it will look like suede paper. It's pretty cool. I go this way too. Let's see if we're getting it to break apart. It's starting. You can see the paper is starting to break apart here. So I'm going to do it a little bit more, and you're just going to keep doing it. It's not going to tear the paper. You're just going to keep using your bone folder to break it up. Break it up, break it up. All right. Let's see. Yep, you can see how the paper's starting to come apart. And then you're gonna pull it apart just slowly and gently. And it should come easy like that. So if it doesn't, continue to break the fibers up with your bone folder. And now you have 2 different pieces of suede paper. Really easy, will give you a good texture for like if you want to do a background. I mean, it's a really good, fun technique. Obviously, you can do it with any color. I just chose this, but to give a different kind of texture on your backgrounds of your cards. So that is the suede paper. Okay, the third technique is relatively simple too. It's been around a long time, and you can pretty much use any stamp set with it, but I do recommend that you use something that has a little bit more detail to it. So I'm actually using the Inspirational Sketches, and I'm going to use this flower here, but I could have used the bird or the mushrooms, but I think something with more lines in it. So the first thing you want to do is you're going to stamp your image. And I'm stamping it in Memento because I'm going to use the blender or the blends to color in my spotlight. So you want to make sure you get some good coverage there. And I'm just going to flip it over here to make sure I'm getting what I need for coverage. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take my white and make sure I stamp it the right way. And I'm going to just stamp it in the middle of my card. Perfect. And then what you're going to do is I'll show you what it actually is going to look like when you're done. But you'll take a punch, and in this case, I'm just doing a sample. I'm not doing an actual card. So you might want to do a little bit bigger one if you're doing it on an actual card. But then I am just going to go ahead and punch out a circle. Okay, and I am using, I'm using the thicker cardstock because of the bleed through with the markers. And then I'm going to take my cutout and just use my markers to color them in. Oops. So like in the, and I'm not going to be super fancy about it, but here's the middle of the flower. So I'm just going to color the middle in. And then we have some leaves, of course. So I'm going to color in the leaves over here. Super easy. Okay. All right, and then I'm just gonna take the Petunia Pop marker and we'll go ahead. Is this the dark or the light? This is the light, so I actually want the dark. So I'm gonna try to do a little bit here where Stampin' Up! Has already told me, here's the dark where they've put the line. So I'm just gonna color in that dark. All right. Oops. And then I'm going to come back through with the light and finish coloring it in. It's a pretty easy concept. It's just finding, the right stamp set that you want to use to highlight. So I'm gonna actually go back over my yellow because it looks a little dull, maybe. All right. Color it in a few more times. There we go. And then what you're gonna do is, normally you would, have this on a card base, but since my card base is non-existent, I'm just gonna take a little piece of white and put it behind there just so I have something that I can pop it onto. So actually I'm just going to go ahead and cut that in half. And I'm actually going to just lay this behind. Again, only it's because it's a sample and I want you to see how it's done. So I don't want to put glue, obviously, on the circle. So I'm just going to lay it down like that since I punched it out. All right, so see what I did? I just needed a backing there, because then what you're going to do is you're going to take your dimensionals and you're going to pop it up. So you just want to make sure that when you lay it back down that you're going to match it up with where you actually popped it out of. So that's probably going to be the hardest part of it. And I think I did it right about there. So I'm going to go ahead and get my pop dimensionals, pop dots, whatever you want to call them. All right, and I am going to use 3 on this just because I want it to be really solid. Okay. Oops. All right. So again, before you put it down, make sure that you are actually putting it where you popped it out of. So I want to make sure that I might not have popped it out. So let's look at this. Okay. So it looks like maybe I did here. I just want to make sure that I'm going to put it down right. Oh, you know what? I don't think that is how it went. I think I'm looking at this little point over here, and I think it's going like this. No, I don't know, you guys. See, I guess that's one thing you got to watch is how. Okay, so what I looked at is this leaf here, and then it had a little bit of an opening there. So that is important to know that you're putting it back in so you're actually spotlighting it correctly. So that's it. That's the spotlight technique. Go play with it and see what you like to do. Okay, the fourth and last technique in this particular series, in series 4, is called faux embossing. So it's a little, you have to play with it a little bit to get used to it because it does take a little bit of practice. So I'm going to show you how to do it. Using the Stamparatus is the best way to do it, or if you have something similar to the Stamparatus. Oops, hit my light here. I'll get that out of the way. And because you need a stamp positioner to keep it exactly the same. So the first thing I'm going to do is, and again, these are smaller samples because they're for a sample book that everybody's doing, but I'm going to line my little paper up here where I have a 1/2 inch on either side of them, either side of the Stamparatus. And I'm going to just take my magnets to hold it down here. And this magnet here, they're strong little buggers. They don't want to give it up. All right. And then I'm going to take my stamp, which is this stamp. And this really works best. This technique works best with a solid stamp. So you want to make sure you have something solid that you're doing it in. And you also want to make sure that your first ink is going to be like a shadow ink. So I decided to use crumb cake. So you'll see what I mean here in a second. So I got my stamp in position, and I'm going to use crumb cake ink, and I'm just inking up my stamp. And like I said, it's taken me a little bit of practice to do this, so don't get discouraged the first time you do it. So I'm just going to stamp that piece of paper with the crumb cake, and that is crumb cake paper that I'm using as well. Okay, and I'm just going to do it one more time. And you know, the stamp that I'm using is not totally solid. It's one of those stamps that's the that has the detail on it. So that's why you're seeing kind of this I don't even know, the modeling, maybe it would be the word for it. So truly a solid stamp is better, but this was the best one I had for this. So I just wanted to give it a little bit more ink to make sure that it was actually had a nice, especially around the edges, because that's where we want it. Okay, so this is the key to this. Now I'm going to move the piece of paper, not the stamp. So the stamp is exactly where I want it to be, and I'm actually going to just clean it with a baby wipe. You don't want to do that very often because of the alcohol in them, but I'm not pulling out my chamois because I don't have it wet. And I'm just going to take my paper towel and give it a little pat to dry it off there. Okay, so here's the key. You're going to remove your magnets and you're going to move your cardstock. You're going to move it down and over to the left, just less than 1/8 of an inch from the top and from the side. So you can see I've barely moved it, but it's moved. So you're going to put your magnets back in place, and you're going to now grab your white craft ink. Now this is not, the ink that I use with the crumb cake is a dye ink. This is a pigment ink. And the dye ink soaks right into your paper where the pigment ink sits on top of the paper. So this does have to be a craft ink to use for this second step. So let's see, I want to get this nice and because this is not a totally solid stamp, like I said, I'm getting a little bit of resistance where the modeling is. So now we're going to bring this down, give it a nice rub to get it all where it needs to be. I'm going to pull it back up. And do you see where the shadow looks like now, like there's embossing happening? So we're going to do that again. You're going to do it a couple times because as you do it, the more you do it, you're deepening the look of what you just stamped. So see how it looks like it's getting deeper? We'll do it one more time. And then this is something you're going to set aside because the pigment ink, again, is sitting on top of the paper. It is not soaking into the paper, so it's going to be wet. So you can either heat set it with an embossing gun or just set it aside and let it dry. So there you go. Do you see the difference? So let me show you the samples that I did. Very easy to do. So I did it with a few different as I was trying. So here is my original one. And now you can see it's a little different. I probably did more ink on this one than I did this one because I was learning as I was playing with it. So there's that one. And this one didn't turn out like I thought it would. I think it's because it was a little too small, too thin, the flowers. And then this one I really felt like I got the best effect with it. So that is what is called faux embossing. So you need a dye ink to lay it down on and then a pigment ink on top. Thank you for joining me for this series, and I hope you try some fun new things. Happy stamping!